KC Laboratory. Sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. A bank is more than a building down the street. It's a partnership for some of life's biggest joys and obstacles. Emprise Bank has all the tools for your rainy days and your brightest moments in life. They're your partner in possible. Sign up online for an account today and let them be part of your journey. That is Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our partner in possible here at KC Sports Network. Our partner in possible with the KCSN Draft Guide. Cannot speak any more highly of them. It's been an absolute joy to work with them. And it's an absolute joy to be back with my dear pals. First follow him on Twitter at Maddie_KCSN. Maddie, I missed you on Monday. I'm glad to be seeing your pretty face again.
Welcome back, Kent. We missed you as well. We had a show without you. We drug it along for an extra couple minutes just because of that. And we're happy to have you back. Now, I think Craig's feeling a little sad because you said just my pretty face, and I feel like we all know, who's the looker of this group.
It's
Craig.
fine.
It's the big RM. Craig, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. And that's it for the KC Laboratory. We figured we'd end this early because Maddie and I go long, so we're gonna save you guys the time.
Kent's so happy right now.
This is great.
He is so happy.
Look, if we take this show and cut it off in a minute and then take your guys' show from Monday, we are averaging roughly 30 minutes a show. So it's perfect. I was in Atlanta for work. I actually jumped in to the live stream and jumped into the comments a couple times to say hi. I don't know if you guys read it a lot because I wasn't actually listening. I just threw a bunch of stuff in there.
Thanks for the support, pal.
Hang on. No. That sounds about right. I wasn't actually listening. I just came in to make my own comments and
Look,
get out.
I was in a hotel and I was chowing down. Oh, I really didn't have a ton. I was talking with people. There's loud music, The Embassy Suites was just bumping, man. I tell you.
I'm sure.
It was hopping. But I did jump in. I think I actually listened to a little bit of the beginning of the show, if I remember correctly.
Quick pop quiz. What did we talk about?
Probably receivers.
No,
because we do every single episode.
I don't think so.
We're gonna talk about one today because Deebo Samuel is reportedly on the trading block. Yet another potential receiver for some people wanting the Chiefs to go out and acquire a receiver. So. It does appear that he is done with the San Francisco 49ers. I think this is one of the most unique cases of all the wide receivers that we've heard potentially being dissatisfied with their contract, being dissatisfied with their situation. Because I think there's like a hint I think there's actually a legitimate argument for Deebo Samuel here trying to extend his career a little bit. Maddie, I don't know how you feel about this Deebo situation. When you initially heard it, what did you think?
I guess I'm going to start at the opposite. I'm going to go from where I am now, going backwards, because I think it makes more sense. So Deebo Samuel, as a pure receiver, I think he does get underrated a little bit by Chiefs fans, especially because we built up some kind of rivalry with the 49ers for the Super Bowl. And now we just want to think that it's like a fake team all designed around Kyle Shanahan's offense, which I guess it is.
Wait. You mean the 33ers? I wonder who would have started that.
Yeah, that team.
Okay.
So I think that Deebo Samuel's a better receiver than he gets credit for from a lot of non-49ers fans. He's also not near the receiver that Tyreek Hill or a Devontae Adams are going to be. So herein lies the problem. No matter how good or bad Deebo Samuel may be in the Chiefs offense, the 49ers are still going to expect that level of return because for them, he is worth that. For their offense, for how they use him, he is worth what Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill got in the Chiefs trade. But is he ever going to be worth that to another team? Probably not. So that's going to be the issue is where are you going to find that balance of a team wants to give up enough value for it to be worth it for the 49ers that they feel comfortable with. And then they're willing to pay him top wide receiver one money when you don't really have a big sample size of him just being a receiver. So I think it's going to be really hard to get him out of San Francisco. It sounds like, according to Josina Andrews, the Chiefs aren't that interested right now. I don't particularly blame them because, like I just said, it's going to be a lot to get him out of there. And I don't see how his value is higher for any other team than the 49ers.
And I think it's the value side of that, because I do think that if the value was right, that the Chiefs would absolutely be interested. For what Maddie said there, he's a hell of a receiver. He's not Tyreek Hill. He is not Devontae Adams, but he is well worth a high-ish pick, not, as some people have suggested, well, maybe 29 and 50, and now all of a sudden, no, that's a big nope out of me. I like Deebo Samuel a lot. We haven't seen him used in a traditional manner, but we've also kind of waxed poetic about Laviska Shenault, Treylon Burks, these guys that can come in and play in some of the ways that Deebo Samuel does and how they fit with the Chiefs. Deebo Samuel fitting with the Chiefs would be ideal. Like, he's going to be able to do all those same things. If they're looking for that style of receiver, Deebo makes sense to try and add to the roster. That being said, he's got a fair amount of wear and tear on his body, and it sounds like the 49ers are asking for a lot to get him out of there, and they should. He is a large part of their offense. Can you imagine if the Chiefs taking Tyreek Hill, who was a large part of their offense, and said, you know what? We're going to let him go for a second, and we're just going to kind of play all this. We would be rioting right now. That's how 49ers fans have to feel about Deebo Samuel, because he is such an integral part of the offense. You can't just let him go for pennies. You've got to get value. I just don't think that value is the same for maybe any team but the Jets at this point, because they just seem to be extremely, extremely desperate for a wide receiver right now.
Well, and there's some reports that the 49ers are desiring more than what the Chiefs got for Tyreek Hill. And that's insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, even throwing 29 and 50 for Deebo Samuel, would you trade Tyreek Hill for Deebo Samuel, pick 121, a future 4 and a future 6? I wouldn't. I think that's insane. I think Tyreek Hill's a better player. Now, it's going to be a fascinating case, everything these guys just laid out. Because Deebo's more valuable to the Shanahan offense than in any team in the National Football League. But the problem is that doesn't jive with Deebo. That's not going to work for Deebo. Like, the resolution for this whole situation is going to be extremely fascinating, because I think what Deebo's looking at is he's trying to get 2 contracts out of this before his career is over. And he's probably right when he thinks and he guesses that if he stays in San Francisco, he's getting 1 deal out of this. And he's going to be more than likely expendable before the end of that contract. So I totally understand where he's coming from. I personally, I'm okay. I'm okay with sitting this one out. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm okay with sitting it all out. I'm okay with sitting it all out for these receivers. And I just poked the bear a little bit. No, Maddie's stretching.
I'm just loosening up to let Craig go. I'm going to sit back and relax here a second.
I'm content with this team sitting this out and not going and using a bunch of draft capital to go acquire a receiver. Go acquire. I mean, maybe an edge, but like, I don't see a ton of edges really on the market sitting out there right now. I like the idea of this team going into the draft with 3 times their average draft capital that they have on draft weekend. I love the idea of this team kind of going young this year, so they have some flexibility for 2023. I still think they'll be good in 2022, even if they do this. And I think it could be really nice to build a second wave of the Patrick LaVon Mahomes era. Craig, don't kill me.
Okay, so let's unpack this. So,
have you? Is any of this out? By the way, have you said any? Have you given this opinion at all that you're about to give?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I've been formulating this
back and forth here and there.
I have landed on this now in the week before the draft. I have shared my affinity for AJ Brown. I would 1000% trade a first-round draft pick for AJ Brown. Again, less than Tyreek Hill. I would not probably trade a first-round draft pick for Deebo Samuel. The more I think about it, the more I'm off of that. But AJ Brown, I would 1000% give up pick 30, pay him like one of the league's top receivers, and profit. I would also immediately, as of this moment, sight unseen at the draft board, I would trade 29 and 50 to move up into the early teens and take the best player available, whether that's a corner, an edge, a defensive lineman, a safety. I would add to the defense with that pick, because then I'm going to turn around and I'm still going to have 62, 94, 103, 2 fourth-round picks. That is generally what Brett Veach has been working with in the draft. And I added A.J. Brown, and let's go ahead and call it, I don't know, Kyle Hamilton. Let's call it, I don't know. It's probably not a corner because it sounds like they're going high. Even a George Karlaftis, a Jordan Davis, somebody like that can add to the room, make your defense better. All of a sudden, you have vastly improved the wide receiver room and your defense, and you've still got your natural second round pick. You basically turned Tyreek Hill into A.J. Brown and a Jermaine Johnson, let's call it.
But hold up. This is what I think is maybe the disconnect here. I don't think you are getting A.J. Brown for pick 29. I don't think there's any chance I think it's got to cost you more. So
okay.
That's
where
cost
me.
I think it costs you 29 and 50. I think that they're going to
29 and 50.
I think so.
Nah.
I think so. I don't think, and honestly, by the way, it looks like, and if we're going to put a name to it and talk about AJ Brown, it doesn't seem like the Titans are particularly interested in letting him go.
No, probably not.
So yeah, we're talking like AJ Brown for pick 29 is like, I don't think that's a realistic scenario on both ends, because I think they would command more than 29 for AJ Brown. I think I
would offer 29 and the polls comp pick and leave it on the table there. And then I'd stay put. I don't want to give up any more than that. I feel like I can build out the rest of my roster there. But since we are talking about trading assets, I would trade 29 in a third round draft pick, or 30 in a third round draft pick, and once again trade up right now, sight unseen, to draft a defender. I think those two would make a massive difference.
For me, it's having the extra draft capital from the Tyreek Hill thing that makes something like this possible, though. I think, like, to Craig's point, you can trade a 1 and a 3, a 1, 3, and 4 if you have to go get a star player, and you still have an entire draft plus. Technically, you still have pick 50 to work with. Like, you still have more to work with. So, like, I think this particular season, that makes sense. On top of that, this goes along with your love for comp picks. Guess what you do with A.J. Brown in 3 years? You trade him away for a first and a second round pick again, just like you did Tyreek Hill. You just borrowed him. Yeah, you paid him, but you borrowed a wide receiver 1 for 3 years. You trade him going into the last year of his contract, like everybody's apparently doing now. That's now the new thing in the NFL. Just keep it going. So you're essentially just getting yes, it's similar concept of a comp pick. You're pushing it down the line. You get a star player. I'm on board with it, but I'm with Craig. Like, I'm drawing a hard line in the sand. I'm not giving up everything they got from Tyreek Hill for A.J. Brown. I'm not giving up everything they got for Tyreek Hill unless it's Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. I think and they would cost more. They would be more. So, like, that's the only time I'm giving up all of those same picks that the Chiefs got from Miami. But if it is pick 29, that pick 103, maybe even you throw in something else, one of those round 4 picks, I'd even still consider it. And I would take A.J. Brown and I would go to the bank. Now, I get it. A.J. Brown is probably not on the table. We don't have to spend too much time on it. Of the 4 receivers that are being semi-rumored to be unhappy, Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown's the only one I'm really curious as to not catching on a deal. He's the only one that I'm even remotely interested in paying what I think is going to be close to market value for.
AJ Brown's like, if you're having me pick one, it's AJ Brown. I just think it's going to be a lot more, because this is a guy that's still 24 years old, and he is an exceptional receiver.
He is.
I think you're going to have to trade. I think you'll have to trade roughly the value of a mid first round pick. And guess what the value of a mid first round pick is? 29 and 50. So I'll ask you, Craig, would you trade Tyreek Hill for AJ Brown?
No.
A 4th? Okay. So
No.
that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think if we're looking at realistic expectations for what it's going to take to get somebody like him, I just don't think there's a ton of scenarios where I feel comfortable doing it.
I mean, he's coming off the worst season of his career right now. He's obviously at a standstill with the Titans. They do not want to pay him the amount of money that he's asking for. Right, he is extremely disgruntled at this moment. Like this is a buyer's market in this regard because he is unhappy and he wants out, and they're looking at him and going, "Listen, man, we don't think that you're amongst the highest paid receivers in the NFL." So with that being said, they may, in the way that the Chiefs looked at Tyreek Hill, they may look at that and say, "Listen, let's get what we can for him right now." I don't know.
It's an interesting scenario, and like this is where like I think we're all just fascinated, and like I think there's a lot of ways it can go. I'm fine with some trade ups in the draft. Like I want them to leverage and maneuver their capital. There's not the list of veterans I'm excited about is not very long.
Okay, here's a question. You're saying 29 and 50. I think that's, fine. Let's use 29 and 50. Would you rather trade 29 and 50 to get AJ Brown? And you have to pay him, obviously, but get AJ Brown for 29 and 50, or are you trading 29 and 50 to go get Drake London and on a rookie deal? Is Drake London going to be AJ Brown? Is it worth having him be cheaper and risk him not being AJ Brown, or is it better to pay AJ Brown and have him?
I mean, it's a good question, but
answer the question.
I don't want to do either. Don't make me pick.
You just said you wanted to trade up.
I don't want to trade up for a receiver.
Okay.
I think you can find a quality receiver with down at the bottom of round one.
I definitely agree with that. I do. I think that there are a couple of guys that could be there, but they're not going to be an AJ Brown. So
hey Craig, where'd AJ Brown get drafted?
I'll say
listen. The man has transcended his draft status.
I've seen multiple people compare this draft class to that 2019 draft class. I just don't think it's similar. One, the draft class as a whole was probably better in 2019, but you were still in that weird fringe area where the NFL thought that receivers you didn't spend highly on, you didn't pay them a ton, you didn't draft them early. And since then, it seems like it was just, all these guys are coming up still on their rookie deal, but like the way the NFL operates, look at these trades for star wide receivers, look at the contracts. Like, the NFL's kind of turned around their belief on wide receivers like that. So, I don't think 2019 is a good. They say, oh, look, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, McCole Hardman, all these guys, AJ Brown, all these guys came from round 2 or round 3. I don't think that's a good comparison right now because that was a pretty weird class that was stronger and the NFL just didn't value receivers. Now we're on a weird tangent about receivers.
I always hate when people say that because by that logic, just go get Tyreek Hill in the 5th round of every single draft class. I mean,
I love how everyone's like, see, the Chiefs stumbled into a generational tight end in the 3rd round and a generational receiver in the 5th round.
And a generational pass rusher and Justin Houston. And
all it took was hitting on a day 3 pick in one of 10 years. That's such a, I can't
listen, weed's legal now. We don't catch those kind of benefits now.
Okay. Maddie, you had some thoughts here. You had some ideas. You always got great ideas. I like this one too. You want to talk about some draft bets potentially and some lines there. I want to hear them. Let's talk.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. The draft, guys, is coming up in a week from the day you guys are listening to this. I know it's from a week now. Craig, I don't know. What are you guys doing for the draft? No? You guys aren't doing anything?
I don't know. I got nothing. You guys want to hang out or something? How about let's invite all of our friends to the Kingdom Bar and Grill Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where KCSN is live from there. We got drink specials. We got food specials. We got giveaways. We'll be there. So please come anyway. But,
Craig is offering hugs.
I am offering hugs. It's true. That's a fact. But if you can't make it to Kansas City, to the Kingdom Bar and Grill, and that awesome fun time, we will be streaming live every single day. We'll be breaking down picks, and we got highlights. We got stuff like that. We are going to give you coverage of everything. And it's not just Chiefs-centric, although we will definitely drift there, especially when we're talking about, divisional opponents and things like that. But we will be doing that live here on the KCSN YouTube page. So make sure you're subscribed. If you can't make it, tune in. We'll be hanging out. having a good time for a lot of hours all weekend long. Maddie, Kent, I can't wait to see your faces all weekend long. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful.
I'm gonna have a great time. I'm glad you told the people where they can come hang out with us. That's good. I hope to see everybody there. All right, so we got some draft props. These are prop bets. Now, I'm not going to say where because nobody's paying us to say where yet. So you guys just have to go find these on your own. Draft props. They pertain specifically to the Kansas City Chiefs. Andrew Booth Jr. What do you guys think his pick over under is set at?
I gotta recover first.
I'm going to say 25, mid-20s.
I'm going to say 35 and a half.
Craig wins. It is 26 and a half. So the over under is it 26 and a half? Now, are you guys taking the over or the under on that though? That's the question. Is Andrew Booth Jr. going before or after pick 26?
I think he's going to go after. I think there's too much injury concern with him. I just think, especially a lot of those teams at the end of the draft there tend to be the teams that are a little more injury averse. It's just worked out that way this year. So I think Andrew Booth might slip into day 2.
I'm taking the over too. And I would love the Chiefs to stop his fall and bring him into Kansas City, one of those picks.
Not happening.
Oh, you're out, Maddie?
Well, I want them to, but it's not happening.
You don't think so?
So you didn't listen to the last podcast. Oh, so I'm glad we cleared that up. We talked about this. The Chiefs bring in all the guys that are injured that they're interested in. They bring them in for a top 30 visit and they give them medicals. Like that's something they frequently do. They bring in injured guys to get their medicals. Guess who has not come in for a visit?
That
Andrew
we
Booth
know.
Jr. Since that's true. There's like 6. There's like 6 top 30 visits unknown right now. But his surgery has been post-combine. So the Chiefs haven't had any chance to see him that we know of to check on these medicals by then. The Chiefs don't usually take injured guys. The last injured guy they took, Lucas Niang, he sat out a year. The hip was clearly still an issue then. It affected his ability to be ready when he came back. His trainer has come out and said that. I'm not going to parlay that into his most recent injury, but like they don't take injured guys. Like the Trey Smith situation was different, but they did a ton of work. If you're not doing these visits, you can't really do that work with Andrew Booth Jr. I'd be surprised if they take him if they don't bring him in for a visit. Like that's why I'm terrified they're out on him because of the medicals. They don't like to take injured guys. That's where I stand with it.
It's going to make me sad too because he's a hell of a player and he'd fit really well with Steve Spagnuolo. But man,
yeah.
Are we gonna do the thing this year where we draft like we do an all disappointment draft where we're just like this is like the most.
Oh, I don't want to be.
I think our last mock draft was kind of like that, wasn't it? Wasn't it like Doomsday from round 2 on?
That's
and
true.
Then people got up and like dropped the people's elbow on us for taking Stout in round 1.
Yeah, it shook out completely wrong for us, and then everybody was like, "You guys are terrible." It's like.
All right. So if you're a betting person though, I would go find these odds somewhere and take Booth in the over. I bet by Monday, I bet those start climbing. I really do. I bet that too. Kyler Gordon's getting all this first round hype. Like there's a reason another corner's coming up. Someone's probably dropping out. Boy Mafe over under. You can go first this time since Craig won the first one.
I'm gonna go 33 and a half.
36.
Oh, Kent comes back and gets a win and ties it up. It's 30 and a half. So he's creeped solidly into the first round. What are you betting? Over or under?
That one I actually believe. I think I actually believe that. I'll go a little bit under then. If he's creeping up that hard right now, that's a clear rise out of him. If he's creeping up that hard, I think that means that there's a team that actually does like, and I get it, he's got the athletic traits. He's bendy. Like I totally understand why a team would gamble on him. We have seen far worse edges go at the end of the first round. Boy Mafe belongs there amongst those guys, better than those guys. So I think I'll go under.
I'm going to go over. And one thing I think you got to take into consideration with some of these lines is they aren't always necessarily based on inside information. I think our Josh Norris does tweet that out a lot. It's just kind of like, some of these props and some of these lines are not always reflected based on inside info. I think that's where the rest of the market is about setting this guy. I'm taking the over. Boye Mafe Senior Bowl. Hey, okay.
Ooh.
Boy Mafe college tape. I think there's two different guys on tape there, and I'm a little afraid of the college
We've
version.
never seen anybody have a good Senior Bowl and get drafted much higher than they were before, right?
Never.
It's
Never. I know. I just like it was so stark for me. It was kind of stunning.
I would lean, if I were to go bet on this, I would probably take the under. I think he has picked up a lot of steam. Haven't heard much about the exact interview process, and that's like the final. If you start hearing a bunch of releases about how he's crushing interviews, then I'm slamming that under. The fact that hasn't come out yet makes you wonder. Not that it's bad, just like that it's not excellent, or it would be out there. That's my one holdup, because I do think there's some issues with his tape that would make me question how he sees the game, and I think that's what slows him down on the field and not at the Senior Bowl. I think 30.5 is a good line. That means the Chiefs pass on him. Like, the Chiefs are kind of your final round one slot, unless you think the Lions don't take a defensive end that are going to go after him. So that's a good spot. Here's another one. One of the favorite picks for the Kansas City Chiefs, Daxton Hill. What do you think his over-under is set at? Craig is up first this time.
I'm actually going to go. I think you're throwing us for a curve, and you're not going down the order here. So I'm going to say 29 on this one.
I'm going to go just to play it safe. No, I'm not going to play it safe. I'm going to give a real, because I could go 29.5. Like, it's like Price is Right, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go 36.5.
Well, you could have gone with 29.5 and Craig still would have been right. It's 28.5.
Wow.
It's early, and it's right before the Chiefs pick. So that's I found that interesting, because he's a guy that gets mocked to the Chiefs a lot. And then the over under for Vegas is coming in right before they pick. I couldn't find Lewis Cine. I wanted to actually get him and Lewis Cines at the same time. This website didn't have Cine, because I think Cine's going to go first.
Yes.
28.5 is pretty early for a third safety, and especially if you're dropping that in before the team that has probably been the most popular to get him mocked to him. So what are you guys taking, the over or under on 28.5?
I do think that it's going to be over. It might be the Chiefs. I think it's easy to put the line at 28.5 if you feel comfortable with the Chiefs. Like, that's his floor. Like, I think that gives you, if you're Vegas setting that line there, I think that gives you a pretty solid floor for you to pick from, because that teams are going to look at this and go, oh, the Chiefs are in love with that guy. I'm sure they like that guy and could fit with him, in Spagnuolo's scheme. So maybe a team has to jump the Chiefs to come get Daxton Hill. And maybe they feel like, okay, well, if that doesn't happen, 29, we can set it at 28.5 and still make money.
Yeah, because I've been looking at some of these lines and trying to figure out, okay, which team are we thinking is going to take them with these overs and unders, and trade ups are all definitely a factor here that we're really not taking into consideration very frequently and are unseen, because it's any team potentially going up if they love them. I think I'm gonna go with the over. I think Lewis Cine is the second safety selected. Where he goes will probably help determine the Daxton Hill. Where Daxton Hill gets taken. I would anticipate Cine goes somewhere in the 20s, and maybe that's enough to push Cine, or maybe that's enough to push Daxton Hill over. I think I'm going to go with the over.
I think similar to the Andrew Booth thing, Andrew Booth not being involved might help Daxton Hill if you're just looking for a guy to cover. He also screams New England Patriot to me. I know they like these weird hybrid safety corners. He just seems like a guy that would make a lot of sense there too, especially as you look to get a Devin McCourty replacement. So I can see the path for it to be under. I would probably leave this one alone. It's 28.5 is early. Like, to say 28, pick 28 or before seems pretty early for Daxton Hill to me, but we're moving on. Jameson Williams. Kent, you were up first. What is his over-under set at?
13.5.
Ooh, man. I'm going to go 11, Maddie. 11.
Okay, I'm going to say you went with 11.5 because it's always halves. And then you guys tied because it's 12.5. So I'm giving it a
timeout. You are stealing a win from me.
Maybe you should have listened to the podcast earlier this week, and Maddie would look favorable upon you.
Hey, Youthful Regis, can I get a ruling real quick? Oh, you were what? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, no, it's a tie. You guys both get a point. So Jameson Williams, I think he's moved up to wide receiver 1. The odds are for wide receiver 1 now. It's set at 12.5. Over under.
Under. I think it's going to be under. I'm hearing way too much smoke about a receiver slipping into the top 10. And if a receiver slipping into the top 10, I think it'll be James. I think it'll be him. I just do. I think he's the guy. And Kent, what do you think before I start in on this next little thing here?
I'm lockstep with you, buddy. Go run.
Yeah, I think it is interesting this week. Actually, Maddie, is George Pickens on your list of bets?
He was not. No.
Okay.
He was not. I think people are having a hard time trying to figure out where to put Pickens. I think the range is far too high, so it's probably hard to over under that and get a pretty good even money on both sides for Vegas.
Understood. Okay. Well, with that being said, I will kind of go into this. I think it is very interesting to see a lot of teams this week or, in the past month have brought George Pickens in on a lot of top 30 visits because they're evaluating his injuries. They're evaluating how he's recovered from things. He obviously came back and played in the playoffs for the NCAA championships. I think it is extremely interesting as it stands right this very moment that Jameson Williams, who has an ACL injury that he suffered in the final in that game, teams have brought him in, vetted him. He is going high in the draft. They feel more comfortable with his knee injury than George Pickens a year removed from it. Like, you hear, why is George Pickens falling? Injury. That's what you hear, injury. And now all of a sudden you point back to that and it's like, okay, obviously there's a very clear delineation there. It's not just a generic injury brush that the NFL paints with, because Jameson Williams is going to go high at George Pickens. We don't know where he's going to go now. It's a little bit up in the air. So I just found that very interesting this week, especially with everything coming out about both players.
If you don't start hearing major traction for Pickens, I think that whether it's medical rechecks, whether it's interviews, because he's got some maturity stuff, it's always on field. It's just the way he carries himself on field, being a little too physical at times, going above and beyond. Something didn't go well if you don't start to hear traction, because he has done a lot of top 30 visits, and to just start hearing anything starting to catch, that is not a red flag. Like, that's something I think you pay attention to.
I think this is the week. I mean, really the week leading up to the draft, but this is the week that some of those guys, you start getting clarity on situations like this. And so we will get some kind of answer, I would anticipate, before the draft. I don't think it's going to be one of those, and I still think you could sneak into round one. I really do.
No, I think the range is super wide. Yeah, I just think that overall, you can't be feeling great about him being one of the first couple receivers taken, just with as many visits have gone by and nothing that you've heard. Whereas Jameson Williams, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, you're hearing so much about these guys. Drake London didn't run a 40 time, and you're still hearing more positivity about him than you are George Pickens. So, I think there's a reason for that. Maybe that changes through the weekend. All right, let's get on to these last ones a little bit quicker, because we got non-player over-unders too after these. So Devontae Wyatt can't make up some points right here.
Well, you're gonna skew it anyway. I'm gonna go 26.5.
I'm gonna go 30.
30.5, because we do halves. Kent wins though, because it's 27.5. What do you guys?
Wait, are you sure you want to reverse the math for Craig to make it work, or
if you keep it off, I might. But are you guys taking the over or the under here?
Man, that's a tough one. I can see him being the second defensive tackle off the board, so I'll go under. I'll go under that.
I think it's a great line.
It's set up to be right before the Bucks. I think that's the kind of goal, is to put it right before the Bucks, who are losing Sue now. And so, I think that's very specific.
Give me the over. Give me the over on Devontae Wyatt.
I think earlier in the process, it was probably higher. I think he got real hot there for a little bit after the combine, and now it's kind of slowed down again. And then also, there's some stuff coming out that he maybe has a little bit of off-field issues that need checking on. We'll touch on that here in a second. So, I would take the over there too. Jahan Dotson, Craig. Oof. What do you think the over-under at is for Jahan Dotson?
Man, I just have no real bearing on him, so I'm going to say 28.5.
I'm going to go 40.5.
Craig wins. It's 32.5. So essentially, is he a first rounder or not?
Yeah.
What say you?
I think that's pretty good.
Is he going round one? That's the question.
Man, I think Pickens swings for him. Like, I can see a lot of receivers going round 1. If an NFL team there at the end falls in love with Pickens instead of Dotson, I can see Dotson falling out. That might be the swap right there. It might be Dotson or Pickens being a round 1 receiver at the end of it. So I'll go over. I'll say he's just barely a day 2 guy.
I'm gonna go over too. I think he winds up where I set the line at. Personally, I think he's gonna fall out a little bit.
Okay, now can I add? No, that's what I want to ask.
Some of these other guys.
That's what I want to ask. Is he going to fall to pick 40-ish because of how you see him, or do you think there's something the NFL is going to see that's going to make him drop to 40?
I mean, you're making me sound really arrogant. No, I just
somebody
think,
clip that.
There's just I don't love him as a route runner. I don't love him. I don't love his hands. I don't love his consistency. He's not the biggest framed guy. He's not the biggest guy, period. I don't love him. I mean, I just feel like teams are going to look at that and they're going to see some of these other options available to them and they're going to like him more.
Yeah.
Speaking of more, Sky Moore. How about I'd rather have Sky Moore than Jahan Dotson?
For sure. I'm not a huge fan of Jahan Dotson either. I've tried to go back and see what it is that I'm missing, why I need to like him more, and I have struggled to find it. Very thin framed, struggles with physicality, gets pushed off his line pretty easily. He looks for ghosts over the middle of the field. He doesn't want to be hit when he runs over the middle of the field. I don't think he ran a 4.43 on a fast track. I don't think he plays like a 4.43 athlete. I don't think he runs by guys. He has to set them up, which is fine. I think he has a decent route runner. I think he's got great ball skills vertically down the field. Like, he's got good hands, great catch radius, but he has to set guys up to beat them over the top. He really has to put in a lot of work to get open, and then he's a little afraid to go over the middle. Physicality messes with him. I see a lot of warning flags. The path to him to win, the path to him to be Tyler Lockett is so slim. There's only one Tyler Lockett, maybe a couple guys throughout the history. Like, that's a hard one for me. Last one here, George Karlaftis. You guys are, Craig's up by 1, so we'll let Kent go first. The over-under for the Greek George Karlaftis. I can't call the Greek freak. That's not fair. He's not that freaky.
I will go. This is a big one. I'm really nervous.
You need these points.
I'll go 18.5.
It's a pretty good guess.
I'm going to go 22.5.
Ooh, Kent ties it up. It is set at 19.5. You were close. 19.5. It's tied 4-4. We'll have to break this tie later on somehow. Over under though. What do you guys think?
Can't go.
I think under. I think there's gonna be a run on edges, and I think he's going to go in the top 20. I think if the Chiefs want him, they're gonna have to trade in the top 20 to go get him. And it might be the Chiefs moving up to go get him. I mean, I think this is one of those. I mean, we can talk about how we feel about it. I'm hoping he falls. I think we've talked about this. I think we'd all be ecstatic with Karlaftis at 29. It's the idea of moving a bunch of draft capital to go up and get him specifically. It's like, whatever. But I think he breaks the top 20.
I think he breaks the top 20 as well. I'll go under. You remember that hot minute where, we thought that the Chiefs could trade up for one of the 4, one of the top 4. Yeah, I don't think that, Aiden Hutchinson, Travon Walker, Jermaine Johnson, Kayvon Thibodeau are making it out of the top 10. I think
top
all
5?
4 of those guys.
You guys save that for next week. We got a lot of draft shows coming next week.
We will.
We're reacting to mock drafts. We're doing a live mock draft with you guys. You got to save these mock draft takes.
I understand. I'm just saying the NFL is not going from like pick 9 or 10 all the way to pick 21 before they take another edge. They're just not going to happen. So I think that George Karlaftis will go before that. I think NFL teams will see a high floor out of him. They see the youth and the ability to grow, put him in the system and let him just develop and progress as a player. Even if we're not the biggest fans of him, I can see how the NFL loves him, just like everybody in Kansas City is going to love our good pals at Macadoodles. You want to talk about growing in the space? That's exactly what Macadoodles is going to go starting this summer in Lee's Summit, Missouri. there's going to be so much traffic coming through that store that franchisees are going to be looking across the way and going, oh man, we got to get us one of those, like even across the street here, just to make sure that we get all of this traffic that's coming here. So if you're a franchisee, get on board with the best customer service, the best selection, and the best prices in town, and get a hold of Roger, info@macadoodles.com, and get a high floor with a chance to grow into the market, just like NFL teams probably get on board with George Karlaftis in the draft this year.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think it's going to be under. I think 19.5 is weird. 19.5 is a strange line. To squeeze that in before you get to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots, two teams that I don't think you hear a lot about them looking for edge. I think that's an interesting spot. I know it's not directly related to who's picking there. It's just it's a little earlier than I think. Go ahead.
That's right after Philly at 18. You know, there are a lot of people believe that the Saints are moving their 2 first-round picks to trade up for someone, a quarterback or an offensive tackle. Okay, so you're sitting there with whoever's sitting with pick 19s making the second pick of the first round. They might be looking to move back again. I mean, I think that's probably that little the teams in this draft are going to be real interesting, guys. I mean, I think
the number 19.5, and this is just playing into people's psyche. 19.5 makes people want to say the over because it's not the number 20. Number 20 sounds a lot bigger than 19. So why not put it at 21.5? Because you throw those other teams in there. Now you're getting it right before the run of Green Bay, Arizona, Dallas, all of which can take edge. It's just, I find Vegas odd setting fascinating. I think 19.5 is a weird spot. Like, I get why it's after. It's just, it's a strange spot for what's coming behind it. We got to break the tie. So this is just real quick. Defensive players in round 1, offensive players in round 1. Which one has the higher, which one does Vegas think there will be more of?
Offensive. 1000% offensive.
Defensive.
Craig wins. It's 15.5 for defensive players, 16.5 for offensive players by exactly 1. Craig is the victor. We can move on to the next segment now. Craig wins again. I think he's undefeated in these games.
I just wish we could have at least heard Youthful Regis.
He's busy. He's a busy guy. You had to put in a request. You didn't file the paperwork to get him on here. What do you think I can do? Just pull him out of the other room?
Remember when Craig got that 1 extra point and you cheated? Okay. All right. Just saying.
So we're going to talk about the Chiefs' top 30 visits. We started talking about it earlier this week in the episode Kent didn't listen to, but we're going to talk about some of the other guys. So, Kent, I'll let you set this up. You can set the table. Where do you want to start with the Chiefs' top 30 visits, though?
Well, you guys said you talked a little bit about cornerbacks, that the Chiefs have had some top 30 visits. There was another one, I believe, today that got reported, and that was Zion Gilbert out of Florida Atlantic.
Crazy tester.
What did he make the C-bet?
I didn't plug the numbers in yet. It was a very busy day.
Could we just maybe me and Maddie kill a few seconds? How complicated would it be to throw him in? You're looking at me like it's very complicated because we could
It's not very complicated. You guys talk.
I can send you the numbers if you want.
No,
you can just look. I retweeted it. Shout out to our guy Justin M.
Zion Gilbert's another guy. JT Woods, I tweeted out when they had him visit. We didn't talk about JT Woods before. Safety out of Baylor, another defensive back that's visited. Some people think he might be able to play corner, track star, long, athletic. He might be close to a tier 1 CBAT too, honestly, because he was a pretty freak athlete. Zion Gilbert, like him, cornerback safety experience. He's played a little bit of both. Knows how to use his length. Physical run defender. These guys, JT Woods is, I know, listed as a safety. Zion Gilbert's listed as a corner. They share some similar skill sets. Both guys would need a little bit of work in man coverage, but they have that physical profile that the Chiefs seem to like. It's easy to make the connection to L'Jarius Sneed, who played corner, then safety, and they're like, oh, hey, come play corner again. The Chiefs have a type beyond just the long-armed physical man press guy. If you've played safety a little bit or do play safety, they might try you at corner. They just straight up might.
Well, and Zion Gilbert, a Conference USA player as well. So another former Conference USA defensive back here in the mix for the Chiefs. Craig, do you have those yet, or are we still waiting?
Almost. Do we have an arm length on this man?
I don't know if we do.
I can't answer that one for you. I would have to pull up Dane Brugler's draft guide that has everything, which would take me a second.
That would be a 29-inch arm length on that. That's going to hurt him. He's
Ooh.
really
Zion
good
Gilbert
tester.
has 29-inch arms.
29-inch arms. And guess what, you guys?
That puts him to
that,
2. Puts him
that
to
knocked
tier 2?
him out
Of tier
of
one.
tier 1.
Blasphemy.
Yes.
So
I'm going to make you do JT Woods after the podcast. You don't have to do that one now.
Okay, that's
but
fine.
we'll deal with that later. That's an interesting one, though. I did not think they'd be that short. Maybe that's why he plays a little bit of safety, even in the Conference USA.
Well, Craig, I want to make sure you get the opportunity to kind of talk about this really quick, because we've kind of looked, and we'll let you start on this, because like we've had the conversation. I don't know if you guys talked about this earlier in the week, but the way that the top 30 visits have been set up, there is one position that has been getting a ton of run in like the day 1, day 2 types are getting a ton of run. Day 3, a lot of these defensive backs, like these day 3 defensive back types, the Chiefs are doing a ton of work on, which just makes perfect sense. And of course, JT Woods is going to get drafted to play cornerback, because even when the Chiefs find cornerbacks, it's actually safeties. But I know you said there is one position that they're spending a lot of time looking at with their top 30 visits. This is going to surprise people. This is clickbait. This is a shocker.
Yeah, it's wide receivers. Guys, we're just going full circle. Look at that. Right back around. No, that's what they've looked at in day 1. They've done their homework on Jameson Williams. They've done their homework on George Pickens, 2 guys that were injured. They had John Mechie in for an interview as well, another guy coming off of an injury. They are vetting early receivers in this draft. I know that will make a lot of Chiefs fans happy. That doesn't mean that they're definitely taking an early receiver, but they are doing their homework on a lot of these guys. They at least feel comfortable in the ability to either make a move to try and get one of these guys, or that they will be available when they pick. And obviously, it sounds like George Pickens and Mechie will be available at the end of round 1. Mechie may be available at the end of round 2 for all we know. We'll wait and see how that works. But I think it's very interesting with everything that the Chiefs do. They typically look at injury, they look at character stuff. They had Devonta Wyatt in, so they look at those 2 things. And then a lot of their other top 30 visits they spend on smaller school guys. Try and get them in the building, try and expose them. Maddie and I talked about that a little bit. Get ahead of the UDFA process or the day 3 process a little bit more than some of these other teams that are, spending their top 30 visits on everybody in the first round. They do their homework on the back end. So when they do these guys that are in the first round consideration and early day 2 consideration, it makes you perk up when there's that many of them in a row. I think that just speaks to the trends we've been talking about. What positions are they going to draft early? I think that's almost concrete at this point, that they are going to draft a wide receiver early in the NFL draft this year.
I will be absolutely stunned if one of their 3 first round or first picks is not a receiver. And I mean, maybe even first 2. I just think, I think you kind of see some of these things materializing. One theory, you could look, not to read too much into the visits, and because we don't even have a complete list of the visits. For all we know, they've visited all 6 edge rushers, and they're going to trade all their draft capital for Kayvon Thibodeau. But you could potentially see a scenario formulating with just the top 30 visits. It's, hey, they're going to draft a receiver early. Maybe they're trading for a James Bradbury and then trying to get cute at cornerback in the draft with some day 3 guys. Like, maybe that's a scenario that they're playing around with. And, I just think about, this is not me advocating, Maddie. This is not me advocating.
Just saying the whole Bradbury thing. Gross.
This is not me advocating.
Day 3 corner is okay, fine. It's what they do. Bradbury, no.
I know. But I'm just like, this is a scenario I could see. Like, this is just something that's playing out. Maddie, you wrote about Devonta Wyatt and his visit. It's interesting. If the big improvement, the big swing is to improve the interior further with a Devonta Wyatt, and that's the guy that they really make a big, heavy swing on in the first round, how do you feel? How early do the Chiefs have to take an edge?
Angry. I think it's an awful pick. He's an older prospect that hasn't been that productive at Georgia. He doesn't get the same excuse, I don't think, as Travon Walker does, because yes, okay, like Devontae Wyatt doesn't have to have 10 sacks to be considered good at Georgia, but he's not their defensive end, right? Like as the 3-tech, as one of your primary interior pass rushers at Georgia, he does get to, pin his ears back a little bit, and it's not always there. I think his balance is pretty bad. He flashes some high-end talent, but it's not there consistently. I don't think he's the 3-tech in the NFL. I think he's a penetrating nose tackle. I don't think that he's this dynamic pass rusher that's going to dominate as a 3-tech. Throw in the fact that he's already 24, or he's going to be a 24-year-old or 25-year-old rookie. Like, he is not young. I don't see it. He's similar to Boy Mafe. You watch him at the Senior Bowl when he knows it's a one-on-one rep with all this stuff onto either side of him, all this space. He makes things happen. You put him in an actual game, he gets knocked off his spot. He gets knocked off balance. He doesn't show great body control. I just don't think he's going to be a super dynamic 3-tech. You draft him to be a penetrating one technique nose tackle that gives you pass rush at that position. Sure. And if that's the case and you take him at 50, fine. So be it. But I don't get the round one hype for him. We talked earlier about those lines. I would not be anyone even considering taking him under what that was. Like, Wyatt is just not for me. I don't see it with him the same way some other people do, especially once you consider his age.
Yeah, he's a tough one for me as well. I always look at guys like that within that scheme, specifically playing in Kirby Smart's mint front next to the types of guys that he was playing with. Jordan Davis draws a lot of focus. Nakobe Dean draws a lot of focus. Trevon Walker draws a lot of focus. Like, the
best player on their defensive tackle, and he's an underclassman.
Correct. Yeah. There are so many dudes on that defense to account for that. Devontae Wyatt, who's a very good player, don't get me wrong, he's a very good player. I think he gets rolled in with those guys a little bit. And I think we see that maybe there are more holes in his game than we get to, give him credit for, I guess, because he's playing with some of these other guys. He's seeing a few more favorable matchups. He's not the guy that offenses are having to build their game plan around. It's the guy next to him that's built like Thanos. Like, that's the guy that they're building their game plan around. I do, before we move on to the final bit here, Zion Gilbert, 30 and 7/8 arms, found that confirmed. I was wrong, but ran a 7.34 3-cone, very stiff. So I does not quite get to tier 1 CBAT. Again, firmly in tier 2, but very, very interesting prospect for the Chiefs to bring in. A little bit of athleticism there for sure.
Seems chiefy. I want to just look at real quick at the wide receivers. You guys talked about a bit off the top, the Pickens, Mechie, Jameson Williams, all injured guys. You can easily write that off as, hey, we're checking on these guys' injuries. We're interested in the position. Christian Watson stands out because there's no known injury. Smaller school guy, though, so maybe they just wanted to vet him more, figure out more about, who he is, because they haven't had as much exposure. So you can kind of make it make sense. It was the day 3 type wide receivers that, I found a little bit interesting. Samori Toure out of Nebraska, Eric Easy out of Texas Tech, my guy, one of my favorite receivers in this draft. Yeah, sure. And then Jakari Roberson out of Wake Forest. And now, Roberson was announced today, and I found him the most interesting because if you look at Easy and you look at Torrey, they're kind of in the top 10 this past year, according to SIS data, in terms of yards created after the catch, in terms of missed tackles or broken tackles after the catch. Roberson isn't. So, I thought maybe there was a little bit of a trend that these day 3 receivers, they're looking for yak guys. They're looking for guys that can do stuff once they get the ball in their hands. Roberson's the kind of the opposite. No yak. He's just a possession guy that mostly played out of the slot. I just thought he was an interesting guy compared to the rest of those day 3 guys to put in there.
I wonder if they're looking at maybe a budget type for somebody there a little bit. They're trying to find
the budget Mechie.
I mean, it would make some sense. If they miss out on him maybe at the end of the second round, they feel comfortable circling back and developing a guy that's like him, liking that, that play style in there. So maybe.
Well, speaking of value here, there was an edge rusher that visited the Chiefs early on in the draft process. And you know what, Maddie? I bet he sticks. It's James Houston's the 4th out of Jackson State. Tell me a little bit about him, Maddie.
He's an interesting guy. He played at Florida actually from 2018 through 2020. He kind of played off-ball linebacker, but in Florida's hybrid front. So there was some rushing of the passer, some dropping into coverage. Then he transfers to Jackson State. He comes down to the Shrine, and I think he came a day late, but all of a sudden you see him walk out on the field and he just looks and moves differently. He looks and moves like a guy that came from Florida as a high recruit, and you can see there's some athletic juice there. I mean, you got to teach him a lot on how to rush the passer or to play off-ball linebacker. He's kind of stuck in between right now, but he has the athletic traits that the NFL usually likes to hold on to.
Yeah, very interesting guy, a tweener. He went to Jackson State. The Chiefs went to the Jackson State Pro Day and had him in as a top 30 visit. So obviously enough interest in this guy. Man, all you got to know about him is his nickname is The Problem. I want a pass rusher whose nickname is The Problem on my team. So I bet he sticks in the NFL.
Yeah, intriguing traits in day 3 of the draft. Those are the kind of guys that have a chance to stick. I bet he sticks. And if you're looking for golf clubs, you need to check out Sticks Golf. They are the best value in golf, hands down. I went and jumped in. This is actually my second set sitting behind me right now of 6 golf clubs. I've loved both sets. They perform extremely well. And for somebody that needed the next step up in my golf journey, these were the perfect clubs. I've got a bunch of golf planned over the next couple months once the draft gets over, and I'll be taking my Sticks golf clubs out. If you are looking for some before golf season really hits, go to sticks.golf. Use promo code KCSN10, get 10% off your golf clubs or anything at the Sticks website, sticks.golf. Make sure you check them out. They are outstanding. We got anything else before we get out of here, Maddie? Craig, what you got?
No, I'm good. I feel drafted out this week. It's a good thing it's not next week or anything like that.
Oh man, yeah.
I mean,
you can't be drafted out. You can't be drafted out. We got a lot of live draft coverage coming on this YouTube channel, on this KC Sports Network YouTube channel next week. I believe Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday leading up to the draft, there's going to be a live show with all sorts of different draft content. And then, as Craig told us earlier, starting Thursday, live, every single second that the NFL draft is going, we will be at the Kingdom Bar. You guys will be there with us supporting, whether spiritually or in person.
That means that we will be live 6 straight days on KC Sports Network, Monday to Saturday, getting you ready for the draft and then reacting to the draft. We can't wait here at KC Sports Network. That is going to do for the KC Laboratory. Thank you so much for listening. Check out all the stuff going on KC Sports Network this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll catch you later.
I'm going to need some trade coffee.